A city built where no city should exist. For over 1,000 years, Venice ruled the Mediterranean from a place that wasn't even supposed to be land. No fertile fields, no stone foundations, no natural resources, just a cluster of muddy islands sinking into a lagoon. Yet somehow, this impossible settlement became the richest city on earth. Its merchants commanded fortunes greater than kings. Its warships dominated trade routes stretching from Europe to the Middle East. Its spies infiltrated foreign courts. Its wealth transformed a swamp into one of the most beautiful cities ever built. But here's the mystery. How did a handful of refugees fleeing invasion create an empire that outlasted kingdoms, humbled emperors, and shaped the modern world? This is the story of Venice, the city that conquered the sea, mastered commerce, and proved that power doesn't always rise from armies. And the reason Venice finally fell reveals a ruthless truth every empire eventually learns. In the year 452 AD, nobody was thinking about Venice. They were thinking about survival. Attila the Hun was systematically destroying everything north of the Alps. Cities burned, populations scattered. Desperate refugees poured toward the coast of northern Italy, toward the marshy Adriatic lagoon that nobody wanted because it wasn't worth wanting. The Venetian lagoon was a graveyard of mud, water, and isolation. Roman engineers called it unusable. Wealthy merchants called it worthless. Rulers considered it a punishment. But what everyone dismissed as weakness became Venice's fortress. Those first refugees, Lombards, Romans, people from Aquileia, Padua, and dozens of destroyed cities, they had one advantage. Nobody would ever chase them into that swamp. By 550 AD, the lagoon that seemed cursed was becoming a sanctuary. Small fishing communities clustered on the barrier islands. They built on stilts because the ground wouldn't hold weight. They carved canals because the water was their only road. They learned to navigate tides and currents like other people navigated streets. This wasn't planned. Nobody sat in a meeting and decided to build the greatest maritime empire in history inside a lagoon. It evolved. Survival created innovation. Necessity created genius. The city that couldn't exist everywhere else became possible here because here was the only place left. By 800 AD, something unprecedented happened. Venice wasn't just surviving, it was thriving, while everyone else was collapsing. The Western Roman Empire was fragmented into kingdoms and chaos. Europe was descending into the Dark Ages. Venice became a bridge. It traded with the Byzantine Empire while Christians fought Muslims. It sold weapons to both sides when it benefited. It moved goods that other traders couldn't touch because of religious conflict. Venice didn't care about ideology. It cared about profit. And that ruthless pragmatism, that willingness to do business with anyone, would become the engine of Venetian power. Here's what most history videos miss. Venice wasn't built by philosophers or generals. It was built by merchants who understood that money flows where law cannot. And you're going to see why every major power in the Mediterranean eventually had no choice but to kneel to Venice. The first real test came in the 800s when Venice and the Papal States were competing for influence along the Adriatic coast. Venice won, not through military conquest but through commerce. They moved faster. They negotiated better. They understood what people wanted before people knew themselves. By 1000 AD, Venice had emerged from the lagoon to become the dominant naval force in the Mediterranean. The city elected its first doge, a leader chosen not by military strength, but by merchant consensus. This was revolutionary. While feudal kingdoms crowned conquerors, Venice was governed by the class that made money. Rulers were elected by those who understood trade, economics, and long-term strategy. The Doge wasn't a king in the traditional sense. He was the CEO of Venice, answerable to an oligarchy of merchant families. This structure was crucial. It meant that Venice was run by people who thought in decades and centuries, not in conquest and pride. The Fourth Crusade changed everything. In 1204, Venetian ships were hired to transport crusaders to Jerusalem, but the crusaders couldn't pay what they promised. Venice didn't absorb the loss. Instead, Venetian merchants proposed a deal. Instead of sailing to the Holy Land, sail to Constantinople and conquer it together. Split the profits. The Crusaders agreed. Constantinople was the largest Christian city in the world. It was conquered in a single month. Venice emerged with half the conquered territory, control of major trading ports, and access to routes that made them the exclusive middleman between Europe and Asia. In one decision, Venice transformed from a powerful city-state into an imperial power. They had islands, ports, military bases, exclusive trade agreements, and they had something else, a proven formula for power: contracts, economics, strategic partnerships instead of wars of conquest. While other empires spread themselves thin with military occupation, Venice built a network of trading partners and fortified ports. The 1200s and 1300s were Venice's golden century. A Venetian merchant family named Polo became the most famous traders in history when Marco Polo reached China and returned with tales of unimaginable wealth. Whether Marco Polo's journey was real or exaggerated matters less than what it symbolized. Venice had reached the unreachable. Venetian ships brought spices from Indonesia, silk from China, perfumes from Arabia, precious metals from everywhere. These weren't luxury goods for the poor. They were literally the most valuable commodities on earth. A pound of nutmeg could buy a house. A bolt of silk was negotiable currency. Pepper was literally called black gold. Venice controlled the supply. Therefore, Venice controlled Europe's wealth. Every kingdom, every church, every noble family needed what Venice sold. This gave Venice leverage that military strength couldn't buy. You could conquer a city with an army, but you couldn't make it rich. Venice made itself indispensable. By 1300, Venice's population was over 100,000, larger than most European kingdoms' capitals. The city was unrecognizable from the original lagoon settlement. Palaces rose from the water. The Basilica di San Marco stood in the center, decorated with treasures and riches that still astonish visitors today. These weren't ornaments of vanity, they were physical demonstrations of power. When diplomats from Egypt, France, or the Holy Roman Empire walked into Venice's squares, they were meant to be overwhelmed by evidence of wealth that outmatched their own nations. Architecture was propaganda. Beauty was strategy. Every statue, every arch, every gold-leafed dome conveyed a single message: Venice won. The competition came eventually. The Ottoman Empire expanded across the eastern Mediterranean. Genoa challenged Venetian trade routes. Mamluk Egypt demanded higher taxes on goods passing through, but Venice adapted. When militaries conquered territory, Venice adapted by becoming wealthier. When routes closed, Venice found new routes. When competitors emerged, Venice bought them out or negotiated exclusive agreements. The Venetian Republic became a machine of economic adaptation. They didn't fight wars over ideology. They fought wars over trade rights, port access, and monopolies. When Venice fought the Genoese, the goal wasn't to convert them or civilize them, it was to push them out of profitable markets. When Venice negotiated with the Ottomans, they accepted Ottoman rule over Constantinople if Venice could keep trading rights. This pragmatism reached its zenith in the 1400s during the Venetian Renaissance. The city became the center of artistic innovation precisely because it was the center of wealth. Merchants commissioned paintings, nobles built palaces, artists competed for commissions that paid enormous sums. The Renaissance wasn't just an art movement, it was a marketing campaign funded by Venetian merchants, proving their superiority through beauty. When Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel, or when Leonardo designed weapons and machines, they were funded by and connected to Venice's merchant networks. Art and commerce were inseparable. Venice proved that a merchant republic could produce culture that rivaled anything created by ancient kingdoms. The Venetian Republic's governmental structure was unlike anything else in medieval Europe. While kingdoms were ruled by hereditary monarchs with divine right, Venice was governed through careful checks and balances. The Doge was elected, not born. Major decisions required council approval. There were committees, oversight boards, and rotating positions to prevent any single person from accumulating too much power. This wasn't democracy in the modern sense. It was oligarchy with internal competition. The same merchant families competed for positions, and that competition drove innovation. If one family's trading strategy failed, another family's succeeded, and that family gained influence. The system forced excellence. It rewarded those who identified profitable opportunities before others. In essence, Venice was run like a corporation where shareholders competed for board positions. But Venice's greatest weapon wasn't its government or its merchants or even its navy. It was its network. By the 1500s, Venice had established fondacos, fortified trading posts, in every major Mediterranean port and beyond. These weren't just warehouses, they were embassies, fortresses, and intelligence agencies combined. A Venetian merchant in Cairo reported back to Venice what the Mamluks were planning. A Venetian official in Constantinople watched Ottoman military movements. A trader in Beirut monitored supply chains and prices. Venice had created the world's first information network. They knew market changes before competitors. They knew military movements before official announcements. Knowledge was money, and Venice owned knowledge. The decline of Venice reveals the harshest law of empires. They don't fall from weakness. They fall from the emergence of something better. In 1498, Vasco da Gama reached India by sailing around Africa. This single voyage ended Venice's monopoly. Spices that cost fortunes when shipped overland through Venice became affordable when shipped by sea around Africa. Suddenly, the Portuguese and Spanish could bypass Venice entirely. Overnight, Venice's greatest economic advantage evaporated. The city that built itself on being the middleman found that the world didn't need a middleman anymore. Within 50 years, Venice's share of the spice trade fell from nearly 100% to less than 5%. Venice didn't collapse immediately because it was too rich, too sophisticated, and too adaptive. The city shifted from commerce to banking. When trade revenues fell, Venetian merchants became the bankers for European kingdoms. They loaned money to kings and emperors, taking collateral and interest. When banking profits slowed, Venice shifted to shipbuilding. When military power declined, Venice shifted to art and culture, becoming a tourist destination for wealthy Europeans and a magnet for intellectuals. Venice refused to fade quietly. The final blow came not from economics, but from geopolitics. The Napoleonic Wars at the end of the 1700s shattered the old world order. Venice couldn't adapt to this new world. Modern nation-states with centralized governments and professional armies rendered the Venetian model obsolete. In 1797, after more than 1,100 years of independence, Venice surrendered to Napoleon. The final Doge renounced his position. The republic that built an empire on pragmatism and adaptation finally faced something it couldn't negotiate with: the raw power of a modern military state. Venice was partitioned between France and Austria. The lagoon that had been untouchable for centuries became a trophy, divided between empires. But here's the brutal truth that every empire video ignores. Venice never truly fell. It transformed. Today, Venice is the most visited city in Europe precisely because of what it built during its 1,000 years of dominance. The architecture you see, the art in the galleries, the political structures that influenced every republic that came after. Venice's legacy became immortal because Venice understood something that empires with military might never grasped. Beauty and culture endure longer than conquest. Venice lost its power over the Mediterranean, but it won something better. It became eternal. The city that built itself on water became the city that transcends time itself. Every visitor who walks through Venice's streets is walking through proof that innovation, adaptation, and pure ambition can create something that outlasts empires. If you want to understand how cities become empires and how empires become eternal, you need to study Venice. Like and subscribe for more deep dives into civilizations that shaped the world. And let me know in the comments, which Venetian era would you want to experience firsthand?